Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are, and I hope you're staying safe. In today's video, I wanted to tell you guys about the difference between advanced parole and a reentry permit. For both of these documents, you would be filling out a form I-131. This is a form that you may be including together with your adjustment of status application. However, this form does do a lot of other things that I think is important to know and be aware of just in case the situation arises. So let's start with the reentry permit. A reentry permit is a document that kind of looks like a passport, and it is issued to green card holders. A reentry permit can both be issued to a conditional permanent resident, which is the first green card that you typically receive, and it is valid for only 2 years, and a reentry permit can also be issued to a lawful permanent resident who has a 10-year green card. So you may be wondering, if I already have a green card, why do I need to apply for a reentry permit? Doesn't a green card already allow me to travel outside of the United States without having to apply for a visa to come back? And yes, that is true. With a green card, you may travel outside of the United States for brief periods of time. USCIS does allow you to travel outside of the United States without applying for a reentry permit for up to 1 year. However, don't assume that you can be outside the United States for 364 days and not have any questions when you come back to the US. As a lawful permanent resident, as a green card holder, you do have a legal obligation to maintain your lawful permanent residency status. If you don't do this, you may run the risk of not obtaining your citizenship down the line, or even have your green card revoked completely. To put it simply, for naturalization purposes, you do have to physically be present in the United States for at least 50% of the year. In other words, some people, depending on your status, may be eligible to apply for citizenship between 3 and 5 years. Out of those 3 to 5 years, you do have to be physically present in the United States for 50% of the time. If, for example, you are eligible for a green card after 3 years, you cannot be outside of the United States for 1.5 years and then remain the other 1.5 years inside the United States. You do have to be present in the United States physically for at least 50% of a year. Trips less than 6 months typically don't raise any questions with the USCIS. However, trips up to 1 year can raise a lot of questions. And with a reentry permit, you technically can be outside of the United States for more than 1 year and under 2 years. You do have to be very careful about being away from the US for more than 6 months and how it may affect your lawful permanent residency status and how it may potentially delay your path to naturalization. So, like I said, a reentry permit allows you to be absent from the US for over 1 year and just under 2 years. A reentry permit is only valid for 2 years, and you cannot extend it. You do have to apply for a new one once it expires. The current fee for a reentry permit is $575, and you do have to pay an additional biometrics fee of $85. Another important note is that you must be physically present in the United States when you are applying for a reentry permit, and you must remain in the United States until your biometrics appointment. Once they collect your biometrics, which is your fingerprints and your photograph and your signature, you may leave the United States and travel wherever you need to travel. And in your initial application, you definitely want to indicate to have USCIS send your reentry permit to a US consulate or embassy overseas. You do also have to apply for a reentry permit no fewer than 60 days before your travel. And with recent delays in processing applications and also different international travel restrictions, I would highly suggest looking into that and applying as early as possible. But I do want to note once again that your reentry permit will only be valid for 2 years. And even if you obtain a reentry permit, it does not mean that there won't be questions raised by uscis once you do come back to the United States after a long period of absence. Some of the things that may affect you being able to come back to the United States is if you commit a crime. Even if you commit a crime overseas, the Department of Homeland Security takes stuff like this extremely seriously, and they may not let you back into the country, or they may begin removal proceedings once you do come back to the United States. Let's list some of the other things that they may look into or ask you about once you come back to the United States after a long period of travel. They, for example, may want to know about your reasons for travel. You may have to present uscis or Department of Homeland Security with the reason for travel, such as if, for example, your job sent you overseas to work, you may have to provide a letter from your job stating that you are traveling for this specific reason. And that is probably something that you will have to indicate in the initial process for applying for a reentry permit. However, that is something that they may also ask afterwards as well. Some of the other things that they may look into is whether or not you have continued to file taxes in the United States. They may also wonder whether or not you have continue to pay rent or own property in the US. Or maybe they would want to look into your bank accounts, whether or not you have continued to maintain your bank accounts in the United States even though you were living overseas. Some other questions is the primary location of your immediate family members and your primary employer. If they suspect that you are beginning to build your residency in another country, they may revoke your right to a green card or obtaining naturalization in the United States. Once again, I want to remind you guys that a reentry permit is given to green card holders when they need to travel outside of the United States for more than 1 year and under 2 years. However, please don't forget about having to maintain continuous residency requirements in order for it to not affect your naturalization in the future. Now, let's quickly talk about the advance parole document. An advance parole document is something that you will be applying for while your green card application is pending. So while your I-485 is pending, you may obtain an advance parole document and travel outside of the United States. If you happen to leave the US without obtaining an advance parole document, they will consider your green card application abandoned, and you may potentially not be able to come back to the US. Another thing to remember is even if you have an advance parole document, it still does not guarantee you admission to the United States. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do have a lot of questions asked of them when they come back to the United States with the advance parole document. They may want to know the reason you had to travel outside of the United States. An advance parole document is only valid for 1 year. If you have to renew your advance parole document, you do not need to pay an additional fee while your I-485 application is still pending. And even though there's no additional fee for advance parole application while your I-485 is pending, in the case that you lose your travel document and have to apply for a replacement travel document, in that case you will have to pay the full fee. Advance parole does not limit an amount of time you can leave and come back to the United States. However, it does expire after 1 year, and you have to be mindful of that. There are certain types of people who cannot apply for an advance parole document, and I highly suggest that you check out the instructions for the I-131 form to make sure that you are eligible to apply for advance parole in the first place. Please keep in mind that Department of Homeland Security can cancel your advance parole document at any point, even if you are outside of the United States, in which case you may have to obtain a visa or a valid entry document in order to be admitted back to the US. However, don't be scared. If you are following all of the directions and laws when you are inside or outside of the United States, you shouldn't really have an issue with coming back into the country. I also wanted to let you guys know about expediting or speeding up your advanced parole document if there is an emergency situation. In that case, they give specific instructions, so I highly suggest you check out the instructions of the I-131 form. But in short, they do request that you write expedite in black ink at the top of your I-131 application, and also include a written documentation stating the reason for this emergency. And there's criteria for emergency situations that are listed out in the form instructions. So I hope that this quick video cleared up some things for you guys about the difference between advanced parole and a reentry permit. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you guys in my next videos. Bye!